Well, it says it's streaming, but is it really? Is it really? I don't know. Edit. Settings. Where do you change? Oh, I have to go through this shit every time, Facebook. In order for comments to be picked up by the other streaming platforms, I have to change the privacy um, settings and privacy. I have to change the privacy every time I have to change this shit to public. But for whatever reason, it's not giving me that option now. That's really weird. Facebook, get your shit together, man. Get your shit together. Edit the audience. There we go. Let's try this. Let's try that. Let's try it. So, don't really know. This is not. Oh, hey, there we go. So, see if I can make me a little smaller so I'm not taking up so much space here. Kind of done this before. It's kind of gonna. I'm kind of gonna. What you kind of gonna do? um, so I really had no major plan. I was playing with something in OBS, um, trying to make things not suck. So anything I can do before my next actual forging stream, if I can do that now and clean some things up now, that's what I'm trying to do. I did get some new goodies for the stream. Unfortunately, no new cameras because some asshole decided that he wanted to run the auction bids up to like $200 on these cameras, which I wasn't going to pay $200 for these particular cameras. Um, so that kind of sucks. I was hoping to add 3 or 4 new, but they're not really new. I mean, they were like top of the line 2011. They're not so much top of the line now, but they would have been not they would have been a nice addition, but not to the tune of $200 a pop. So I stopped bidding on those once that dickwad decided to start running the prices up like that. If that was you, I just want you to know you can go fuck yourself. I don't necessarily think that was any of y'all. But you know who you were, Mr. Green, or was it Grass Valley 3000 LEX, running that shit up to $200. Yeah, I got something for you. I got 2 of those for you, by the way. Two of them. That dude, it was no bueno. I don't, honestly, I mean, just looking at those cameras, I mean, they would have been handy, but I don't necessarily think that they were going to be perfect for what I wanted. Like I said, are a little dated. Um, Let me see if I can pull one up here real quick, and I'll show you guys what they look like. I think we're a little dated, but again, it was one of those like if I could have nabbed it for 50, $75, then you know, then then it would have been a handy little addition to the stream. So the big benefit to this camera, by the way, for those that are not in the know, is the SDI output, which is a bit more robust connector than HDMI. Um, HDMI cables are really kind of delicate, so if you look at one wrong, it tends to break. I currently in the shop have two completely dead 25 plus foot HDMI cables, so I'm going to have to order some new ones eventually. But SDI would have will stand up to the abuse a little bit more, a little bit better. So this camera could have done some things that I wanted it to do, but like I said, $200 though, that would have been that would have been a little spicy. I'm not trying to spend that. I mean, if I'm going to spend, um, oh, I'm going to say high dollar, but if I'm going to spend high dollar on a camera, I want to move up into something a little bit more better than what I'm currently sitting on. Um, which the cameras I use right now are the what is it? The Panasonic G7s, I think, are what I'm using. Let me pull one up just to check. Um, yeah, that looks like the camera I'm using now. I'm pretty sure it's a G7. There's not a box sitting right here. So the two quote unquote anvil cameras that I typically use are it's these. It's a um, it's a pretty good camera though. Most of the issues I have with the camera are because I'm a moron, not because the camera sucks. It's mostly the operator. Um, like every time I've actually sat down and read the documentation or looked up some stuff on them, I've had no problems. But that's a pretty decent camera. I mean, it's a little quote unquote dated as well now. They're a little older, but you can get them relatively cheap. This is a GH7. This is not the camera I'm using. I did not pay $2,000 for that camera, by the way. This is more like this is a G7. There it is. So this is closer in line. I still didn't pay this much for. I got it cheaper than that. Like I said, you can. It's a little day. It's a little older camera now, so you can get these cameras. I mean, not you're not getting them for $50, but you can get them relatively cheaply now. And then if you watch eBay, you can also pick up lenses um, relatively inexpensively for them. Um, but it's a good camera, and it allows me to do some stuff that I would not be able to otherwise. So I don't know. What I do know, um, I don't. They start throwing terms around the PTZ systems. I don't know what the I don't know what the shit that is. I'm a dude that beats on steel for fun. So some of this stuff is like I don't know what that means. BTZ cameras. Um, but I do know that I picked up in an auction a not that I can swing the price by the hey Patreon people that I don't have. If you're looking to pick up a camera for me, one of these PTZ cameras apparently can be operated by this new video switcher I snagged in an auction. So it's got a little joystick like this thing here, and it allows me to switch around. Actually, that particular device, I think, can manage 7 to 14 different cameras. And then from that controller, you can actually like pan and zoom and adjust white balances on the cameras and so on and so forth. So these cameras are in that class, I guess. Uh, clearly, way out of my price range. Like way out of my price range. But somebody's feeling generous. You just let me know and I'll get you my address. uh, Kidding, by the way. Um, I've had several people in the past um, offer up some suggestions on some stuff for what they use on their streams. But to be honest, and to be completely fair to those guys, they're making things happen with the cameras that they're using just fine. But the problem is, I mean, they were suggesting these web cameras and that they can get relatively cheap. But the problem is if you look at the stream, um, the video quality shows as much. It's capturing what they want to capture. I get it, but it's not what I'm looking for. But the image quality is kind of, um, you know, I mean, but for the price, if they get you in there, then that's cool. But I mean, obviously, like these PTZ cameras, I ain't dropping 2 grand on one of these cameras, man. This thing better be like, it better be filming for me at that kind of money. Like I should just, I should just be able to tell it what I want it to do, and it just magical shit happens at 2 grand. Um, they're SDI and HDMI with IP. So there are some features to these things apparently that are pretty sweet. Um, but I don't really need all of that. Clickbait. I don't know. What do you mean clickbait, Bill? I don't know what. Oh, does it say? Does it still say Wednesday Night Forging? It does. I don't know why it says that. Um, because the date's wrong. What the stiff? What the stiff? Let me go fix that because what is Wednesday night? Hey, you guys can see my calendar and see all the dumb stuff I've got lined up. What is today's the 20 something? What's today? Hello, today. The 24th. So Wednesday's the 26th. Okay. So let me go fix that real quick. I mean, too little too late, I suppose. Um, edit, settings, edit event. Well, update titles. 26. So that was the 26th. Wednesday Night Forging. Actually, Forge table mockup. That's what I'm going to call it in the description. So on Wednesday, um, I need to, I don't need to, but I want to forge kind of a mock-up of the table I'm going to forge for my new forged table. Let me see if I can pull a picture of that up. I got to do that off screen so you guys aren't looking at all of my dirty pictures, all my forge porn. I can't be having that, that's letting the secrets out of all my forge porn. um, so let me pull up the picture, and I wish I knew who had done this originally. I would definitely give them credit when I pull this up. It was just one of those things I saw online and took a screenshot of it and was like, oh, hey, that's exactly what I'm wanting to do, essentially. I mean, so as soon as I find it, Jesus Christ, where in the hell is it at? As soon as I find it, I will show you. Promise. I promise. Here it is. Okay. So let me pull this over. Yeah. So, um, so this, so imagine, if you will, that there is a forge table sitting, resting on top of this overall table. Can I zoom in on this thing? So this is kind of what I'm shooting for. Um, something similar to this. Um, uh, Mine is going to be a little different. Um, Hang on, I gotta pull up stuff again because stuff went away. Anyways, so mine would be a little bit different. Like, so it's still gonna have this mortise and tenon essentially setup kind of going on that gets riveted into place. This part is going to essentially be the same. I don't know about this. I don't dislike it. I just don't know that this is what I want to do. So the problem is, and I wrote the measurements down and did not bring them in. So that forge table, it's a big beefy boy. It's um 52. I'm gonna say I'm probably wrong, but it's 52 inches long and 30. Actually, I think it's 57 inches long. No, 52 inches long, and I think 37 inches wide. So imagine you, if you will, and then um, the sides are 7.5 inches, almost 8 inches tall. So imagine you, if you will, that beast sitting on these legs. These legs would hold it. This looks like 2 inch square. Um, these legs would have no problem holding that. I just think it would look a little funny. So that I don't. So my idea is I would prefer that where the base of the leg meets the table, I would prefer this to be much beefier, closer to three inches, potentially even 4 inches. Um, we'll see. But so the problem there, right, is if I want that, there's a couple of ways to go about it. Would be to get 3 inch square and forge it down, or 4 inch square, forge it down. Um, which I have the capability of doing, but that's a 4 inch square bar that's 30 inches long. Um, there's some significant weight there, and you've got to be able to get that in and out of your forge. That becomes um, work. So another option would be to take a 2 inch bar and build up what you want, right? So I could weld additional material to this to build this up to where I want it to, which is likely what I'll do. And then around the feet, let me pull up that. I sent this to Paul this morning, I think. We were talking about what I wanted to do with the feet, and I found an example, so I sent it to Paul. Sent that example to Paul this morning. Uh, so let me pull that up real quick. Maybe, maybe. So can I drag this over here? Oh, of course not. Why would it be that goddamn simple? Open. So here it is. Um, so this is essentially what I want to do with the feet on the legs, right? So it would be the same thing, essentially. I don't know how well I can zoom in on this. Um, yeah, not, apparently. So this is probably the better. Let me reset, reset. I said reset, god damn it. Apparently the reset button does not do a thing. Why is this? Anyways, this is essentially what I'm shooting for. Got, for a lack of better word, foot, like like a tiger's paw or something like that. Um, but to pull this off, I'm gonna have to do the same thing um, up here. What the hell? Jesus Christ. Okay, let me take this off screen for a second. Um, but anyways, um, so on that table, I kind of have to do the same thing. So building up the base portion to pull off that foot, I'm going to have to forge weld material back onto itself, or I can upset that end of it. But I don't necessarily think that's going to be the best approach. I mean, it can be done that way for certain, but that's more work than just to bend a piece over onto itself and forge weld the amount of mass that I need there, want there. I think would be easy to do. So for Wednesday, what I'm planning to do in my stream is to, um, so down here, what I would want to do is basically mark this off at a certain spot, and then I would bend it back over onto itself, forge weld it onto itself, and then that would give me the mass that I need down here to do that foot. Um, so what I'm looking to do Wednesday is instead of 2 inch, I'm not doing it in 2 inch as a test. I've got some 1 inch bars that I'm going to kind of play with, and then the idea is to get a feel for what I need to do to get that foot forged out the way I want it. Um, and build the mass up at the base where the table meets the leg. I'm going to do the same thing just to make sure that that my idea of what I'm wanting to do is yeah, exactly, Roy. That's exactly what I'm looking to do. Um, but to build this mass up, really, I've got some plate that I think is the appropriate size. It's like half inch thick, which give me the 1 inch on the opposing sides. So it'll build this up where I want it to be. Again, like I said, the other option is to go get a much bigger piece, which my power hammer can forge that down no problem. The problem isn't the capabilities of the machine; it's moving it in and out of the forge safely. Becomes kind of that becomes a job in and of itself. Where so the other, and then again, like I said, for the foot, I'm going to do the same thing down here, similar thing, to build up the mass for what I want on the foot. So that's what Wednesday I'm going to do. I've got some 1 inch bar to kind of play with the idea. One, to make sure that what I'm looking to do is not completely over the top crazy, which I don't think it is. But then the other is to get a basic idea of how I want to forge that. So my theory being that once I create this lump of mass on the end, right? For the most part, it's just isolating the material where I want it to be isolated, and then just fullering these particular sections where I want them. It depends on how ornate. I'm not going to get super ornate with it, but you can do a lot of different things. I've played with the ideas before. Um, I'd originally thought it would be, and I still think it would be really cool. I still think it would be really cool to do a dragon's claw, but that table by itself probably weighs close to 500 pounds. So my problem with a dragon's claw is the claw ends get a little thin. I would be worried about them folding down onto themselves without making them super huge. And it's making it the project way. It's taking it out of a scope that I'm really prepared to mess with. But the paw thing idea, I'm still down with that. It's relatively simple, but there's still plenty of mass on the end of that'll be able to hold that table up no problem. Um, a forge welded bundle, yeah, that's another idea too. Thanks, Brian. Um, Definitely to build that mass up on that end, relatively simply. Now, one of the things I can do, Paul and I talked about this. One of the things I literally can put this in my vise and upset it with a sledgehammer. That's not a problem. When I built the stand for that vise, I actually made sure I could stand up a 2 inch square bar in the jaws of that vise and it passes all the way through to the ground with no interference whatsoever. So technically, I could do that in my vise, but that's work, man. Like I said, it's also um, it's not that it can't be done, but controlling that I feel like is easier by welding the mass where you want it. I just feel like you have a little bit more control over it that way versus wailing on it with a 12 or 15 pound sledgehammer. um, to upset it. Anytime, anytime I can add mass to something versus upsetting it, I would, or break down a larger mass to something else. Those are the approaches I would much rather do versus upsetting something. I do not like upsetting material. I think there's a time and place for everything. It's just not my favorite technique. Um, the upset square corner, I've become the ultimate cheater on that. Actually, I think Roy has a really good video on welding that mass in those corners. And I saw that one and I was like, well, yeah, why would I go through that constant back and forth beating on this damn thing when I could just weld that stuff in there? That's where I'm at with that. Hey, John Doby. So this is the table I'm looking to. I don't know if I have a picture of that forge table. I don't know what it is. Like it's like a big buffalo table, maybe. Mabel photos. Hello, if I could type, that would be fantastic. What the hell? Photos. Okay. So I'm gonna go see if I actually have a picture of that table. It's a big one. I bought that from Ted Stout. Whoa, about this time last year. Um, it's a big, heavy-duty cast iron, big mammer jammer. Um, I don't necessarily need a forge that big, but it's cool, man. So sometimes you just gotta have the cool thing, right? I do like um, my smaller forges for sure. Being able to, like, I got three sitting on out in front of my shop. In fact, the idea that we can just load up my job box, it's got the fire pots in it, and then one guy can run over and grab that forge table and throw it in the back of the truck without giving himself a hernia in the process. That to me is awesome. So we can easily travel with three forge stations for the most part, and it ain't no big deal. Two, usually do two, but I've got enough to do three. And then my favorite thing about all of that is the fact that I don't have to break my station down in the shop. So when I get home, I just unpack stuff and go. It's great. Um, so another thing I considered, I've not ruled this out yet, by the way, for the foot, is to do this. Um, to do like a dragon's head on end and make that kind of the foot. I thought about that a little bit, um, but I don't want the horns. I just want something different, just something forged that when people look at it, they go, "Oh man, check that out. That's forged." Yeah, it is. Um, you know, I just think it's kind of cool. Um, I had originally thought to myself, man, I'm not forging this table. That's dumb. I'm just going to fabricate something. But the more I thought about that, the more I thought, I'm not into the nostalgia of things for the most part. But at the same time, I was like, man, this forge table is big enough and cool enough. It deserves more than me welding a bunch of angle iron together. Big angle iron. Um, and honestly, I would rather save that stuff for some swage stands anyhow. But I was just like, it just deserves a little bit, it commands a little respect. And I don't intend, that forge, I don't ever intend to really move anyways. So I actually have one in its place right now. It's a cast iron. It's not as big, but there's a cast iron forge table in that spot right now. But that one's going to get moved for the big one eventually. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna guess that thing weighs every bit 500 pounds. When I pick it up with the tractor and hit a bump, the tractor goes rocking and a rolling. From that momentum, that weight bouncing on the on the forks. Yeah, it's a heavy thing. Let me see if I can find. Oh, that reminds me. Um, so striking anvil, we're not gonna go over that. We've talked about these a bajillion times. And again, and let me just reiterate: no, please do not use forklift tine for your striking anvil plates. Please don't. If you want to use that for a keyed in anvil, that's cool. That's fine. Um, but trying to fix these when you've dinged up your hardy hole, trying to fix these when somebody's put forklift tine up here instead, man, it's just it's brutal, dude. It sucks. Just don't. Mild. Stick with mild. You're not gaining really much of anything by going to forklift tine. You're not. I get it on a keyed anvil. Um, I get it. I suppose. I mean, if you're gonna do that though, you might as well get the damn thing hardened. If you're gonna go through all that, but my mild steel keyed anvil is fine, and it does not take much to clean up if I need to clean it up. Um, it really doesn't take much to clean them up. But so that's the keyed anvil. I got a TV tray infusion here. I was wanting to look at. This is kind of funny. Here it is. No, TV tray. There it is. So, like my greatest accomplishment with infusion was figuring out um, this joinery and these damn things. Um, so it's not working right now. I don't know if I'm clicking on the wrong buttons or what I'm doing. But I got to a point where I can move these in and out independent of one another. I don't know why it's not working now. But what's nice about this is I discovered, not that I'm going to, but I realized one day that I can actually send these rails to Send Cut Send, and they'll just plasma cut them out, and they'll be perfect every time, and have them powder coated. And I'm not gonna do that, but I just had a good laugh at it. Derek Melton and John Perilou poking poking the bear with all their non-blacksmithy stuff, doing blacksmithy stuff with their plasma tables. That I thought about this and I thought about that, and I realized I could actually do that. It made me laugh. Um, but if you're looking to make one of these, they're relatively simple. The hardest part about them is getting folks to take their time and lay things out cold. Um, Everybody seems to want to rush through it, and it's where I tell you where they tend to screw up the most is this measurement here, the on this rail, that because this rail is essentially what holds your legs apart and keeps it from collapsing. But for whatever reason, this one tends to get screwed up the most, and I think it's because there's an offset there that people don't account for sometimes. Because you got this, but they don't think about that. They just measure it once, and then they screw. Every time we've done a class with these, that's the spot where people screwed up. Um, but yeah, just take your time and then lay things out cold. They come together relatively easily. There's not, you know, I mean, there are little tricks that you can do to make it, but it's not that hard really. It's just a matter of taking your time. If you use half inches. If you use quarter by half versus quarter by three quarter, the biggest trick to that is if you're not like dead nuts on the quarter by half, boy, will it tell on you quickly. Where the quarter by three quarter, you've got a little bit of fudge room there, so you could be a little off and get away with it. Um, but I will say, when I think Brian had originally suggested using the quarter by half, and I thought he was crazy simply because of how much harder it is. But what I've come to realize is I've done one with half inch. Some of the rails, they look really that dramatic when you open those holes up. The half inch is really dramatic, really stands out in half versus three quarter. Three quarter, you almost got to open it up to 7/8 to get that same kind of wow factor, which you don't really need them open that big. Um, but yeah, you just really want to be like, take your time, take your time, and get everything laid out cold, and then execute. Be very deliberate. I have found um, once you start get into the rhythm of it, you almost kind of find yourself in like a zone, and you just start doing the thing, right? And if you've got an induction forge, let me tell you, induction forge makes these kinds of things, these kinds of projects, very, very easy. Because you're going to be able to isolate your heat right here, right on this hole, right in here, and a very high heat at that. So you can do a lot of different things. I've also found, like one of the things I did on one of mine is I forged a horse head on one of these rails just because I just wanted it to be different. I get that way. I know enough about myself to know that I'm one of those people that I can't do the thing because that's the way it was always done. I've got to throw my flair at it a little bit. I just posted some S hooks, and I hate forging S hooks, but I had just posted some S hooks on Facebook that I'd done. Um, the same with those S hooks, right? Like I always look at things like that and try to ask myself, how could I do this a little differently, and step outside of that box, and make this what it's supposed to be, but make it different enough to make it stand out a little bit. And also from a forging perspective, one of my favorite things to do is drastically change the cross section of the material and leave the original material there so people can look at it. I think it's what I love about doing hammers, right? Especially if you stand up an original billet next to one. It's you see that transformation. You can see it. But I did an S hook like that. I think it was at a quarter by three quarter, and I left in the middle of the S hook. I left a little portion of the three quarter by quarter intact, just to kind of show um, that that's what it was. I did a similar one at Coal Iron Works at one of their hammer ends. I had taken a piece of half-inch bar and did the same thing, but in the middle, I left it half inch, true half inch in the center of it, and then did the rest. But it's one of those things where like only like your everyday person, they're gonna look at that and have no clue what's going on. But a blacksmith would look at it and go, "Oh damn, check this out." They would be in the know. Most of them would be. Um, so that kind of stuff, I like that kind of crap. But anytime you can, you know, your TV tray is going to work just fine like this, but I forged a horse head on the end of one of these bars just because I just wanted it to be a little different. I wasn't even sure it was going to work, and it worked fine. And you can see it, and it's there. But yeah, an induction forge will make this kind of project. It doesn't have to be a TV tray per se, but if you're going to do this many pass throughs, it makes it so much easier, and it saves you a lot of time. I can't tell you how many of these rails I have burnt up in a coal forge. Oh man, nothing's more frustrating than punching 6 holes in a damned rail and then burning the damn thing. Oh, you want to hear Rob get spicy? He wants to hear how spicy my language can get. Be in the shop when I do that. There's at least 3 of those in my river now. I think they made it to the river. Several of those have been chucked from the back door of my shop, followed by a lot of expletives. Brian, the forge table thing, that's what led to that, really. I remember you telling me about doing that, even with the other ones. And I was like, well, yeah, I told him, why can't I? And then I saw the picture of that one, that table, that whomever. And again, I wish I knew who had done this. I can't remember who it was. I would totally give them credit right now. Um, but it was just one of those things I saw on Facebook once and just grabbed a screenshot of it. As soon as I saw that though, I was like, oh wait a minute, that's exactly kind of what I was thinking about doing. So it's like sweet. I mean, it's a relatively simple forging. The only difference is, and if you're familiar with a blacksmith's post vise, you'll notice there's a transition going from the top of the post and then going down into the leg. I want to do something similar here. This was just taking the corners off down here is essentially, but there's a little transition there. Um, I want to kind of try to mimic that transition. I think it's pretty well executed on Colombian vices and Peter Wright vices. I've seen it on, but definitely Colombian vices. I think really have it. It's really done well on those. Let's see if I can find one to show you what I'm talking about. Um, I think it was Colombian, but it might be a Peter Wright vice that I saw that on. That I was like, oh wow, that's pretty sexy. Um, what we got here? That is not it. Those are Colombians. All right, let me type in the words. What the? Mm-hmm. Peter Wright. So let me pull this over. So this is the transition that I'm kind of talking about, been rambling on about this right here, where it goes from this and then down into this broken corner, for lack of a better word. That's kind of what I want to do with the legs for the table, something similar to this. I just think I like the lines. I think they're sexy. So, why should my forge be a little sexy? Because I'm a little sexy. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm shooting for. I don't know what this cheap viewers thing is all about. That's some kind of spam bot. Why don't you get out of here, spam bot? Drawing out corners on the forge table. Oh, that could be cool. Heron Forge is who did the table? Yeah. Okay. So Heron Forge. But so this Peter Wright vice, I think it's a Peter Wright. Yeah. This is that transition that I was referring to, though. This is kind of what I wanted to mimic that style. Um, so going from a heavier part up here and then transition down, you know. Well, am I allowed to do transitions anymore? I think Trump made that not a thing, right? So these won't be able to go enjoy the swim team. So I don't know. It's a bad joke. But yeah, the sexy lines, man. I just think it's kind of you know some visual appeal to it. I think will be kind of cool. So I've got some 1-inch bar in the shop right now that I'm kind of do basically like a tiny version of this. Just trying to figure out one, if the various welds that I want to do are going to work out. Two, the forging of the foot is going to work out. And then three, figuring out, like I already know in my head, but figuring out those transitions, like the tooling I have, will that work? Or do we need to make new tooling slightly modified, like the fullers that I have might be fine, or it might be that we need to make broader broader fullers to pull that off. I don't know. Um, and this is why I'm going to play with a test to figure it out. And it might just be like boom and give me exactly what I want. Um, but again, trying to manhandle a 3-inch square bar, you know, does not appeal to me whatsoever. But taking a 2-inch square, I mean, tell 2-inch square bar at that length is is a it's fun. Paul somehow has always ended up having to manhandle those bars when we decide to forge anvils out of them. But they're hefty. I'm gonna guess 60-ish pounds. But it's at least a little bit more manageable than if it were a 3-inch bar. So I'm thinking by forging, that mass where I want it will make that a little easier to deal with. Um, Somebody was suggesting, you know, doing the whole brick and mortar thing for the table. And I really, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I don't want to do that. Not that I have a problem with that style setup, but it's just, if I could forge it and make it something that's visible, it's a piece within the shop that would get people talking and something to talk about, conversation piece or whatever. Yeah, no, the 2-inch bars are not. I mean, they're manageable, but after a few minutes, they start to suck a lot because they're like 60 some pounds. And you're trying to manipulate this 60-pound bar around. You got a couple of chuckleheads hitting it with sledgehammers. Um, and it seems like they never hit the damn thing where it's supposed to be hit. But hey, we got it done at least once. But yeah, it's Heron Forge on Instagram had originally posted this. So I'd like to give that person credit because it's a nice piece of work. I mean, and again, it's ultimately it's a relatively simple piece. This bar right here and this bar here, in my humble opinion, it could have been hex, Bill. Just saying. Wait till you, wait till you see the other thing I'm going to do on the stream a little bit is a tong rack for my forge tables. And I already have tong racks, but I had been thinking about this idea um, for a few weeks now. Um, so I'm looking forward to getting that going too. I almost went out today, but it was a little. I went out for a little while, and I was like, it's a little colder than I would prefer. Uh, so it's supposed to warm up a little bit this week, a little bit, thankfully. I tell you, in the cold, it's a, it's my feet, man. Once my feet get cold, I turn into such a baby. And like, oh, because it feels like it takes hours before my feet will ever warm up again. Yeah, the air thing, I get that, John. I get that, I do. But I've not found a need for any of that on a coal forge. An air curtain could be nice for certain. And that would be relatively simple enough to tie into the table. But I know me enough to know that there's certain projects that it gets to a certain point where I'm just like, if I run into an issue in that regard, like I feel like I'll be sitting in a shop with a half-built table out of brick and mortar for a long time, where I feel like if I forge it, I just personally I feel like it's far more in my control at that point. It's weird, I know, but it's just one of those things where I just feel like it's a project I could personally commit to and get completed. Um, Says the guy that still hasn't made the Hardy stem for his V block. Well, we're gonna work on that this weekend. But there's just certain things. There's certain types of like building type stuff that I just know enough about me to know that it's like, ugh, I have zero desire to deal with that. So, anyways, let me close this before any of my forge porn shows up. You guys think I'm kidding, but well, here, let me just close your eyes. Here comes some forge porn. I have a ridiculous amount of this kind of crap in my photos thing because I see stuff like this and I save it. I'm like, oh, must have that. Let's make sure that we're not streaming anything we shouldn't be. Well, I'm sure there's that here too. Um, Here is some dragons. No, we don't need to see dragons. These kinds of things, by the way, are really handy to have. Here's one I took from Brian's Facebook page years ago um, on doing a flower. And these are really handy to have available to you on your phone or something. So if you're going to do something like this, you can pull it up. Especially if you've never done it before, you can pull this up on your phone and look at it and use that as a reference. Brian's got some great pictures of stuff like this. In fact, he's got a great. It's essentially a storyboard on how to get to that starting shape. You know. So I mean, I've made a few of these. I've butchered many too. Um, but I know what needs to be done. Executing it, that's a different story. But I know what needs to be done. Um, and that's all on great thanks to Brian being is generous as he is with sharing this information. But anytime I see a storyboard that somebody posts, I will grab screenshots of it so I can hold on to it for later. Like here's one of some tongs. That I was like, oh hey, look, that's a great little, you can see the progression for these tongs. Um, and it's like, oh yeah, yeah, that's pretty sweet. I'm gonna save that. That might come in handy one day. I haven't made these yet, but um, it's just stuff like this. So when you see stuff like this, I mean, I would highly recommend you take screenshots of it and keep it somewhere you can get to it and go back to later at another point. Is something. It could be inspiration, or it can help. It can inform um, on something on how you might want to try. Here's one from oh, who was this? This was Toby Glowers, Toby something. I'm sure I'm butchering the poor guy's name. Toby Forbes Gower. That's who that was from. He was working on, I think, a big mirror piece um, with those types of elements in it, and I was like, oh man, that's pretty sweet. I'm gonna save that. I've never made it. Um, Here's another example of something I did. S hooks. So going back to doing S hooks and breaking away from the traditional style. Somebody had asked about this right here, and I kind of had a sneaking suspicion of how it was done, but I wasn't 100% certain. So I went and did it myself just so I could speak intelligently on the subject, and I made this S hook with that element in the middle of it, showing them how it was done. Um, so every once in a while, you see, I don't know, I don't want to call it a challenge, but a quote unquote challenge like that, I would urge you to get out in the shop and try it and see what you can do, right? See where it takes you. Um, you might be surprised. You might surprise yourself. Sometimes, you know, you could easily start second guessing yourself on some things, and then from time to time, you'll do it and go, damn, hey, hey, like that worked, like hey man, that worked. That did what I thought it was gonna do. And the only reason you had that knowledge is because you tried something, so you had seen it kind of before, right? And I'm trying to look for an example here of that. Um, but we like to do 1 year at Quad State, we decided to do what we refer to as a large upset flower. And one drunken night at Quad State, we did a really bad version of it, and we used a lot of tooling that we definitely should not have been using. But we did it, and Paul and I made it a point to go forge the tooling we needed for subsequent runs. So we were out there bashing on sockets, and using ball peen hammers as top tools and other dumb things that we might have been doing that night. Um, but in the process of forging those big upset flowers, one day I had like this moment of like, oh hey, what if we did X? And I wasn't. Let me see if I got a picture of it here. But I wasn't 100% certain that it was going to do exactly what I had hoped that it was going to do, but it kind of did. Um, and it's one of those things where it's like, well, it was completely um, the flower Brian screenshots that I showed you earlier. It was completely derivative of that to a degree of me forging those in the past and kind of bearing witness what happens. So and I'll pull a picture of that up if I can. Again, I don't. You'd think at some point I would organize all these pictures and get rid of all of these half-naked ladies. Um, so I would just have forging stuff here. But hey, yeah. So let me pull this over. So the way I forge this flower is similar to this. So when we forge the petals, what we'll do is we'll take a round fuller or a ball fuller, and we'll centerize it here and hit it down, and it will create what we're looking for. But what I had noticed when doing that, like, yes, it'll do that, but if you continue to drive that ball fuller down, especially in this area here, like you're gonna drive that down, but if you pull it back here and you hit it back here, what happened I had noticed was the pedal essentially lifted up. So it curled up, right? Um, So on the big upset flowers, I was like, well, we can kind of do the same thing. It's just it's a lot more material, obviously, but it does work. Um, it maybe not as dramatic, but it does work. Here's uh, I don't know what this material is. Maybe wrought iron, but I think this might be brass. I remember Kurt Fehrenbach had given me a chunk of brass and he said, make something cool. And I got that far and then I killed it. Um, I need to revisit that project. Yeah, I straight killed it. Like, not like killed the, I mean, I just destroyed it on accident. Kurt never actually got that piece because it did not survive me. I learned a fair bit about forging that material, and one of the things I learned was is it pisses me off greatly. That was one of the things for certain that I learned. It really pisses me off. Trying to find the upset flower. I mean, if you guys have ever been around us at a bigger conference long enough, you have definitely seen it. We usually do something like that. We'll get several guys and do one. And it kind of came about. Steve King was always bringing around um, a big nail, essentially. And I was like, well, the nails are cool, but after a while, I mean, it's just a nail at the end of the day. It's like, let's do something else. Let's try something else. And Mark Lang, I think the year before, had posted the upset flower, just a basic upset flower using like half inch. And I had decided I wanted to do that for my hammer in. And then when we went down to Louisiana on the ride home, Paul and I had talked about it. How I was like, well, why don't we just do a really big version of that? So that's what we did at Quad State. And then at, at Quad State, we came to the conclusion that we just didn't really have the tooling, the appropriate tooling to pull that off. So we forged the tools we needed, um, which I'm really glad we did. That's one of the fun things about forging with Paul. Is like sometimes it's like, hey, we should do X, and like, hey, do we know how to do X? And we're both like, oh, we'll figure it out. We always seem to figure it out. And he was just here over the past day or so, and we were talking about something about how it seems inevitable for us that we'll do something like that, and then the subsequent ones that we do are always better because we figured something out in the process of doing the first ones that we're like, oh, we can do this and this will be better, and so everyone we've done ever since has been a little bit better because we learn a little bit each time, you know. All right, have a good night, Brian. You should answer your emails like I do and just hit delete, 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 select all, delete. My boss hates that, by the way. But yeah, a lot of the things when Paul and I will forge, some tools like that a lot of times, I would say we're both pretty good at paying attention as we're doing it and try to figure out, okay, as we go forward, how do we how do we take lessons learned from that and apply it? Um, I don't necessarily think I'm like the greatest blacksmith of all times. No, I'm not by any stretch. But I think one of my strengths, and this kind of comes from my just career path in the IT world, but one of my strengths is I tend to be pretty good at looking at a process and learning from it, and then taking from that process how to apply it more efficiently as we progress through that work. Sometimes, sometimes that stuff I've learned from Brian too, where it's like, oh, hey, something Brian has shown me will inform some of that. At the time when we start, it doesn't necessarily, just pop right up, but as we go through the process, it's like, oh, whoa, 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 wait a minute. If we do X, this would just give it to us. And we actually did that making top cupping tools a couple years ago. And through that process, I was like, hey, if we just did this, this would make this so much easier. And it did. And we made two that night, and they both came out pretty damn good. Perfect? No, but and if we had kept at it and kept mental notes as we worked, each one going forward would have gotten better for certain. Um, and I think that's one of the things I love about this type of forging and the processes. Right, there's some things that are, it's just because it's been done a certain way 1,000 years doesn't mean that's the only way to do it or that is the most efficient way to do it. You know, one thing a lot of times people need to recognize, I think it's overlooked quite a bit, is 1,000 years ago labor was cheap, manpower was cheap. You could get 30 guys, and all you had to do is keep them fed, and for the most part, they're going to be happy go lucky, as long as you kept them fed and they weren't starving anymore. You were golden. So you could take as much time as you needed with these jokers to do that kind of stuff. You know, that's not really the same. Sent a text with picture. I know we aren't. Oh, a picture of the flower. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So here's an upset flower. This one. See, I see Paul's touch mark in there. I think that's mine in there. Was this the one we did in Louisiana? Did we do this somewhere else? I think the one we did in Louisiana we left with John. I don't remember where this one was done, but so you see this hex kind of thing in the middle, right? How we did this originally is we used like a 12-sided or whatever, 6-sided socket. We put in there and beat the shit out of it with a sledgehammer. Like I said, not yeah. Thankfully, the safety police were not around that night. We would definitely have gone to jail. But what I had thought about once was like, we could we could do this the way, and we can use that ball fuller and come in here and knock these in and give us that same thing. And I think they're fun because each one is kind of unique. Like each one is a little different. We don't really make them the same. We let the metal flow, man. um, but we just try to keep them um, organic, and it's kind of just going with the flow kind of a thing with these. Each one, I mean, you see three right here, but each one is a little bit different. Um, it's like honestly, I think the quad state one might be the ugliest of the bunch. Mind you, it was like 3 in the morning, and there was a lot of alcohol involved at one point, and poor decisions on tooling. But we got it done, man, and we had fun. And several guys got in on it. Like I think Jot was involved, Dan Brasky was involved. Pretty much everybody in our camp got in on it. It was fun. So every time I look at that thing, I think of those nights, the memories from that particular quad state. It's one of my favorite things about quad state, is all the shenanigans we get up to while we're out there. It is never. There's no shortage of fun to be had. Um, we're always we're always doing something. It seems like that's when Paul and I have our best crazy ideas. Is it around 11 o'clock at night, or later? Yeah, we had forged several tools to work on these flowers. Essentially, we're taking what I don't remember 3.5 inches of inch and a quarter round, and we're upsetting that down and making essentially a hockey puck out of it. Um, and then at which point we'll cut in a little bit. We'll hex that piece up, that round bar. Now that hockey puck, we'll hex it up a bit, and then we'll cut in these petals, and then we'll drive in a big round eye punch that we forged to create this area here. And then we'll use ball fullers, and I think we've got a couple of different size ball fullers that we use to pull the lobes out on the petals. That also drives this in a little bit. If as long as you position it correctly, you can hex this round thing here up. Another technique that I stole Dave Custer, was instead of what we were doing was splitting the hex. And what I had found was like if we split the peaks, David did that in a demo, and I thought it was really cool, and it added a very cool effect on the pedals, and we did one like that. But I don't know. There's a lot of different things that you can do with this, and a lot of different fun, and it's very informative on how material is going to move as well. We had found that if we don't keep this mass centerized, if it gets off center a little bit, pulling these petals out with that round fuller actually becomes really difficult because the amount of mass providing resistance behind it can makes it a little tricky. Um, so I mean, just to pay attention to stuff like that, it's really kind of interesting how much it will inform things going forward. Um, and then really just kind of take those mental notes. What's going on here? Oh, and then you can use that knowledge somewhere else down the line. There's, I think personally, I think that when it comes to forging, that there are certain laws, physics, if you will, but there's certain laws that you really can't break those laws because the material's not going to let you. There's certain things that you just can't do because of the principles involved. You know, without an exponentially exponential power increase, there's no way around it in a lot of ways. Like sure, if you were to do something like this under a press, yeah, you could probably get away with it, but you know, but you've really got to ramp your power up big time to do that. Um, And even then, that could potentially lead to other issues, right? But just things to think about. So if you're trying to do something like that under a press, think about what's going on and go, oh, boom, okay, I get it now. I think Brian was the one that told me that if I wanted to make a cupping tool under the press, and forgive me, Brian, if I'm misquoting you on this one, but I'm pretty sure it was Brian that told me, don't use a round bar to make a cupping tool under your press. Use square bar. And the reason being was because a square bar, it's much easier to centerize your ball fuller that you're going to use, right? It's much easier to centerize that on a square bar versus a round bar. And he was totally true. It was totally right. Um, it was totally easier. But on top of that, honestly, I think I gave Chase Smothers the one I did in square. Um, but to be honest, I loved the way it looked. The way it squashed down also is just cool looking. It looked really cool. Um, I need to get around to making a couple more of those out of square. I think they just look really cool. So I'd like to do that again at some point. But yeah, centering it on a square bar on a square versus on a round is so much easier. So much easier. I mean, once you train your eye to do that, yeah, it can be easy. But square just kind of because you got those corners out there. It's just kind of sighting those corners now, right? If you're round, you don't have that, you know. Um, on a press, you don't really get a lot of second chances on a press. Once you've done something under a press, it's really hard to correct it. Um, on a power hammer, you can kind of cheese that a little bit. You can't really pull that off with a press. So let's say if you've created a depression in a piece of material with a press and you're off, to try to move that, what happens is the press just moves that bar right back into the original depression and just takes it deeper, but it doesn't actually move it. Where on a power hammer, you could technically ride the edge of that depression a little bit. As long as you're hot, you can put your bar up there, or your fuller, for instance. You could put your fuller up on the edge of that and roll it up and hit it, and it will do the thing. Where a press will not do that. A press is just going to push it down into the original depression. Um, ask Dan Browski about that one. That was a fight he weren't going to win. You missed a call from Mark Ling. I don't know when did this happen. What? Oh, this isn't. This has got to be an old message. Why is it showing me that now? I don't know. I'll ping him tomorrow. See, see, I don't know how. Sometimes I'll miss these calls from people. I feel bad, and I feel bad trying to like interrupt people like Mark or Andrew because those dudes they're always working, whereas me, I'm just always dicking around. So I feel bad interrupting those guys. Like, hey, did you mean to call me? Um, always, anytime somebody calls me, I'm like, why is somebody calling me? That's weird. Like, nobody really wants to talk to me. Maybe I don't want to talk to nobody. Hell, I like to talk to those guys. Roy was doing something on his stream the other night that I'd like to try. Um, it was I don't know what would be the word for it. I mean, it was a scrolled element of sorts, made out of multiple pieces. It looked like it was made out. It was like 6 to 8 different pieces maybe more. I don't know, but it just looked fun to try. See you, Paul. But it looked fun to try, and I don't do that kind of stuff, and I really need to do more of that. So when I make attempts at it, I don't suck at it as bad. Because when it comes to the scrolls, man, I'm pretty terrible. And Jot sent me. I'm not pulling that picture up on the stream because with Jot, you never know what you're going to get. Okay, this one. This one looks safe. Forged Ball Land. What is he sending me? How is a how-to? Is I think Jot is working on like a book. I think a book. I don't know that I'm letting anything go by saying that. But Jot's working on like a book on some forging techniques. So what of it I have seen so far, it looks like he's off and running and doing a pretty good job. So this is how a forged ball end. Oh, we were talking about this a few weeks ago. Forging a ball on the end of a piece of flat bar. And when he was originally describing it to me, I was like, wait, what? Because my initial thought to that was, what? So would you just bend the end of the flat bar over onto itself, forward weld it down to get the mass that you really kind of need to make any kind of substantial ball, And then he was like, no, no. So he was talking about doing something else, and I was like, dude, I don't fully get what you're saying. So I think what he's done is he sent me a picture of the thing. I've always been more of break larger material down to what I want, but the more I play with forge welding stuff, the more I'm like, oh man, you could just forge weld this and this, and then you'll get the mass that you want for this. And yeah, Jot and I were talking about this. I don't know. I don't know. Say about 2 weeks ago. So when he was describing it in also me driving, by the way, he was describing it in a text message, and I was like, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about right now. So this is actually infinitely more helpful now that I can see. Yeah, let me pull this over here. So you can even see where I'm like, forge welding to get the mass, because that was immediately where my brain went. And he was talking about this, and I was like, hey, top secret. If I just give you a thumbs up with essentially, and that's it, that generally means okay, because I don't know what's going on. Plus, I was driving. But yeah, this is much more helpful to see. But even this, I just don't. I just don't see this providing enough mass to make a substantial ball. But it looks like it. This other picture is showing a bit more, so I get it. Yeah, I get it. I might have to play with this on Wednesday. So I'll do like the ball ends on like round bar or even square bar quite a bit. I've shown that on the streams a few times. So the one thing I've had people ask me about that, the one thing, and maybe I didn't state these two things as clearly maybe as I should have. One, when you do the initial set down or the necking down of where the shoulder for the ball is formed, you don't want to take that too deep because as you actually start working that down, it will thin that out substantially there. So you got to be careful not to take that too deep. Where I think a lot of people take it too deep. I've done that. Um, but the other thing that I don't know that I've been good at telling people is hot, 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 hot. If you try to set the shoulders on that ball and it's not hot, what's going to happen is it's going to skip off of your anvil almost every time you hit it. You want it hot. Once you get it established, it's a little easier to do. But if you don't have that established right out of the gate and you go to upset that ball end down, it's going to skip out of your anvil if it's not hot. I've watched a couple of guys doing that, and they were struggling with what was going on, and I had to explain to them that like you want that ripping hot, um, or it will skip out on you like that. And if you're going to do a hex ball, Brian had done some videos on that recently, by the way. But if you're going to do a hex ball, personally, I let that cool down a little bit as I start to start to form the hex. I just find it for me easier to see. So until you get a feel for what you need to do for your turns to forge a hex properly, uh, let that cool down a little bit and then just start it so you can see it a lot easier. Um, might help. It helped me originally. Um, and anything you do on one side, you want to turn that bar 180 degrees and do it on the other side. Then do your next turns. And so if you hit it here, you need to completely flip it around and hit it here. You know. So if you hit it here, you need to reverse that and boom, boom, boom. You know. Equal forging. If you want equal sides, you got to forge essentially equally on all sides. If you don't, what will happen is you'll start hitting harder to try to correct for that. But by hitting harder, what you're going to do is you're going to create a hex with like long sides, and that is kind of a bear to fix once you've done that. At least it is for me. It can be fixed, but it's just like you just made yourself a lot of work that you didn't need to. Um, I've done that. You know what's really funny is this: I have forged by hand with no swage, by hand, um, a pentagon from a botched hex. Kind of proud of that. I probably couldn't do it again to save my life, but I did. Um, Corbin has the scribe somewhere to prove it. That reminds me, Corbin, he was supposed to forge a similar scribe and give that to somebody, and I don't know that that's happened. I think I'm going to have to ride his ass the next time I see him. Pay it forward, dude. That's how that works. Somebody gives you something, you then give somebody else something. So keep that in mind, little buddy. Guess what you're going to be doing this weekend? Um, but yeah, so 1 1/4, 1/4 makes a small ball. Good for hat hooks. Hmm. I don't know that I've ever tried that per se. So I'll have to play with that this like on Wednesday, sometime this week. I think I've got some 1/4 or 1/4 by 1. I got some heavier flat bar too that I could do the same thing with. Definitely make a more substantial ball, but I would prefer to try with something a little smaller first. I'm actually holding on to that bigger stuff. I'd like to make tongs out of it. But yeah, I'll have to try that. But I think Wednesday, I want to do the, the test table out of the 1 inch stock that I was showing earlier. I want to do that. And then I need to build 2 tong racks with this new style that I kind of have in mind, that I think will be pretty cool when they're done. We'll see, provided I don't butcher them. Um, when we were down in Louisiana, I had forgotten my tong racks here at the house, which we've since found, but that really annoyed me that I'd forgot those. And to make it worse, I left the stock that I have to make those with. I left them in the shop, so when we got down there, we didn't even have stock to make it with. I was really annoyed. I need to make some hooks for my striking anvils too. Um, but the tong racks, I have an idea for that. I think it'd be kind of cool. So want to get those banged out. Um, I really missed having a tong rack on my forge. Now, the other thing about it's nice about to have a tong rack and or a tool rack on your striking anvil, Jod, that you use. Jot doesn't use his. He just displays his tools out all over the place. Um, but what's nice about that though is ideally, if you got a TV tray, for instance, if you kind of have an idea of where everything's supposed to go, you can usually just kind of like look down at the tray or your tong rack and realize what's missing. So you don't pack up a bunch of stuff and then inadvertently leave something because you didn't realize it was missing when you're looking at your tong rack or you're looking at your TV tray. It's like, oh, look, it's just missing. The hell? Is that a pack out dolly? What I like about the ammo can I have, um, I forget what it is exactly, like, but what I like about the one I've got right now, what I really like about it, let me pull it over here. What I really like about this one is I can, as long as my top tool handles aren't too long, I forget what the length is exactly. They're still plenty long, but I can put pretty much all of my top tools in this ammo can. I really like that. So that's the one I'm using. Got this from Dana Dupree last November at Warriors Way. So he had a couple of those. Paul and I both have one. But I really like that my top tools essentially fit in here. Um, so if you're looking for one, those are the magic numbers that you'd probably want to look up. But yeah, they're long enough that I can get pretty much a full fleet of top tools in here, which is really handy. Um, really handy. And there's jots. Hey, those are some nice pickup tongues right there. Lock dams. Did you get your tongue rack attached to the ammo can? Is that how you got that set up? That's cool. Yeah, I don't know if those are the same cans, but they look similar, at least in size. But yeah, that sounds about right. 14-inch handles I can get mine in. So I keep them. I think as long as I keep them under 16 inches, they'll fit in there pretty okay. But I'd like to get a couple more of these just for some other stuff. But I do like them. Oh, excuse me. I'm always looking for. What I really like about like the ammo can setup too, aside from that, is they stack nice and pack nice. So I have a 24 by 36 or 48 job box or whatever it is. So it's all this stuff will pack nice down into that job box, you know. So when I get home and want to unpack, it's relatively simple to unload all my stuff. And then, I've got a tractor with a loader, and I can just pick that job box up and throw it in the back of the truck or throw it on a trailer, and I've got everything. I love that. Nice. You know, steel buckets are nice, but man, I have noticed. So there's two issues with steel buckets, right? Is you've only got the one handle, and it seems like they always get a little bent up or wonkified. And somebody, and Ed, I'm not talking about Ed here when I say this, but it seems like somebody always wants to put everything in one of those damn buckets, and they weigh like 200 pounds. So, so what's nice about these ammo cans is they have lift handles, one here and one on the back side. So it makes picking these up so much easier. And I don't feel like I'm about to break my toes in the process. Um, Now I will warn, like the standard ammo can. I say the standard ammo cans. You know the ones I'm talking about, right? Those are great for storing punches in. The problem with those is, again, you can get a little nutty, and before you know it, that damned ammo can weighs 70 pounds. Um, and fishing your punches back out of those damn things can suck too. I haven't done it yet. I've been meaning to print a 3D insert with 3/4 inch hole spacings in it, so I can put that down in the can and then put all the punches, stand them up, so it's easier to see what it is I'm looking for when I'm trying to fish things out of it, you know. And I've been meaning to do this for a while, haven't done it, is getting more of those ammo cans and labeling them for what they're used for. So, like, I would have a can just for doing horses or seahorses or blah, blah, blah. And I keep just those tools in that can. So that way, if I go out to the shop and I know I want to forge forge some horse heads or seahorses or flamingos or whatever, I just grab the right ammo can and I'll have all the tools I need in that can. And if I have them all stood up, I won't have to fish around through it to find what I'm looking for. It'll be right there. Huh. Maybe that's what I do tomorrow. Is I will model up the insert for that 3D for that can and print one. Um, I haven't actually printed anything on my 3D printers in a while, so they're probably like, "Hey, Rob, why have you forgotten us?" But no. It's one of the things I love about 3D printers, right? You can just knock stuff like that out really quick. And I can take that same model, by the way. That's the another thing I can do. I can take that same model and I can send it to a place like Send Cut Send and then have them cut out and drill out a little chunk of aluminum to do the same thing. So the problem with a 3D print, right, is if I keep it next to my forge, I'd have to worry about the material. I use ASA or ABS, so it's got a higher melting point than PLA. But if you were to use PLA and you set that on a hot forge, not hot, but that ambient temperature will radiate into the bottom and it will deform it eventually. Where the ABS is less likely to do that, but if I did it out of aluminum, that would never be a problem. Yes, I could do that myself. I've got I got a drill press and I've got a mill. I could technically do that myself, but you know, if I've got the DXF file that I created in Fusion and I do a test print with it and print it and validate that it's going to work, then I could just send that to a send cut send, and $30 later, I get exactly what I know is going to work out of the material I want and, done. It's a great service, I mean, for sure. So if you've got a 3D printer, keep send cut send in mind when you print something, right? And you think to yourself, man, how cool would it be if this was done in metal or aluminum? You could send your DXF file or your step file to them and have it done that way. So you can print it to test it first to make sure it's going to work before you spend the money on it. And then once you validated that it's going to work, you send it off, and then you get it back. That's what Derek Melton did with the swage blocks essentially. He 3D printed them and then had them cast or whatever. Um, that was he prototyped all that with a 3D printer. What are some things that, I mean, 3D prints obviously not the greatest thing for, but they're great for prototyping and validating that your idea is sound before you spend the time milling something out or cutting something out on your plasma table, wasting material. You can validate that it's going to do the thing, and then you can deal. That Online Metals apparently does it too. So you can send it off to a place like that, and then you send your file that you've tested and validated that it's gonna that what you've created is going to work. Then you send it off to a company like that and get it back, and you're like, all right, sweet. I've actually played with the idea um, of taking this Fusion file that I've got of a TV tray, um, but I want more than these rails. I just haven't had time to go around and stack it up. This is a basic tray, essentially what I would consider a basic tray, but I want to do more rails here. Almost twice as much, not quite twice as much, but a lot more intricate pass-throughs. But I toyed with the idea of doing that and then taking these rails and sending it off to like a send cut send and have these plasma cut out and powder coated. Um, and then all I have to do is create, forge the frames. And I can still forge these pieces when they come back and do other stuff with them, but if I wanted to. But the idea of getting them powder coated, same with the table itself, I could have them do that and we have it cut exactly what I want. And so I've toyed with that idea. Yes, you can forge all of this. It's funner. It's more cool to forge all of this. But, I mean, the fact that I could just send this file off and have these things come back, powder coated and ready to go, holes perfectly aligned, makes it. So I had been thinking about like how would we go about doing a large class of TV trays, but make sure it's something where everybody goes home with a functional tray. We would still punch these, but not all of them, but we would still go through the process of this. So, because they need to learn how to do this, because the idea is, what I love about a TV tray like this is you can keep building onto it at home if you want to, but make a simplified version of this with the pre-cut rails where all they gotta do is forge out their frame and get their frame constructed. And once they have it constructed, then they just slap these rails in place and they are good to go. you know. So, a, a quote unquote class where, the student goes home with a thing, which seems to be a thing. A lot of people, everybody wants to take a class and they wants to leave with their thing, a finished thing. And this would make that relatively simple. Yes, it's cheating in a lot of ways, but I think, and again, I think you take the time to show them how to do this so they can do it if they want to. But here's this option of, hey, we're going to slap this together now. You're ready to rock and roll. And if you set your TV tray up at Quad State and Hurricane Helena or whatever the hell it was that came through last Quad State, and rustifies everything you own, you're covered. Literally, not a single thing I had at Quad State came back without rust. Not that did not happen. I still laugh at the fact that we were in Ohio and got hit by a hurricane. Like, what the hell just happened? That's craziness. Just crazy. Small cans are better for the punches than the standard can. 20 mil. Um, yeah, honestly, I don't know which ones they are, but they're a little taller. Those are the ones I want because I cut all of my hand tools typically at 7.5. So I'd like to be able to stand them up instead of laying them down flat, which the cans I currently use, they don't really stand up, but I can lay them all flat. But like I said, the problem with laying them flat is you got to. It seems like you got to dig everything out to find what the hell you're looking for, and I'm just kind of getting over that. So I don't know if you've seen mine, Jot, and my other one, but it everything locks in place. So what I have on, I'll have to take pictures of it. Um, so here along this rail here, I have a piece of half punched, and I bend it in. So, well, I bend it so it'll sit flush with this piece here, and then there's a tab essentially that sticks out, and it prevents this bar from collapsing any more than whatever I have that bend set to. And I do two of those. So I do one along this edge, and then I do one here, and the same thing. So this bar here can only go so far. And then what I do is I just forge a long wedge essentially and drive it through the holes here, and then that locks everything in place, and it doesn't move. It actually worked out way better than I expected it to. Um, it was one of those things where I was sitting there one day looking at it thinking, what can I do here? What can I do? But yeah, what um, the and what was nice about that was is I left it just enough space between this rail and the half-inch rail. There's just that I can actually drop. It's about a quarter-inch of gap right there, so I can drop a rasp down in there, and it holds it in there great. But what drives me nuts is, if you don't have these done right, especially when people drop stuff in down on the rail, top tools or whatever here, these will slide in and out. So the way I did that, like I said, there's a piece that comes here, and then there's a tab that sticks out from the half inch from where it bent, and it will only allow this rail to come in so far. It keeps that spacing, and then there's another one out here, same thing, and it just prevents it from moving in. And then when I drive a wedge, it's a long wedge that goes through this pass through, this pass through, this pass through, and then all the way down. And once you run that in, it locks all of those in place, so none of that will collapse. So once you have all these bars correctly aligned, like the legs, as long as your rails here are, once you have this on, as long as this rail can't pop off, these legs can't technically can't collapse. You have to pull that bar off, that rail off before you can flatten this. But yeah, it all works out really well. So I'll have to take pictures of that. I'll do that tomorrow and show you what I'm talking about. And it worked out really, really well. And it was super simple to do. I just marked out where I wanted those bends, and just stuck it in the vise and just bent them just straight down essentially, and it worked really, really great. Um, but you still have to get the holes punched appropriately, but everything else. But yeah, it's just locked in with like a, I don't know, like a 4.5, 5 inch long wedge essentially. Um, Kind of just locks everything in place and it doesn't move. It's great. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, why did it take me so long to come up with this? But I like it because I can set a 1 inch. I've got it set 1 inches along this edge, so it perfectly holds bottom tools really, really well. And then, like I said, there's another gap here, big enough that allows me to drop a rasp in there, and it doesn't fall out or anything. Um, I love my TV trays, but my big one is my favorite, which is why I was talking about doing more rails. I really love the intricate redonkulous pass-through pattern that I have on my bigger one, and I'd like to make another one, but um, it's not for the faint of heart. It's really funny is when I remember when Brian saw it, he was like, "Well, that's cool, but why did you do it like that?" I was just like, "Well, because the picture I was looking at, I couldn't really tell what was going on, so this is what made sense to me." Um, it's crazy. Oh, we last year, I think it was last year, we really honed in on the TV tray, simplified it, and made it something a little more approachable for some people. But the other thing was standardized a lot of the hole placements. We had figured those measurements out for people. The problem was the minute that they didn't follow those, problems happened, obviously. But um, we did eight, somewhere like eight trays, over a weekend with a bunch of beginners. So I think we did a really good job on really paring down the quote unquote class and making it something, that was kind of quote unquote standardized. But like on these rails here, there's a lot of different things you can do. Um, to lock them into place. There's a lot of different things you can do. That's what I love about the TV tray, right? Like, is you can do you can do a lot of different things with it on your own and still have a functional tray and still build onto it. It's like a giant Lego. You can build onto it, modify it to different things. Like when we did the tray class, Josh Perkins made this tray for his, like a little drop-in tray here somewhere. Some other guys did some other stuff. You know, I think Paul's table insert here, he had his in such a way that when he puts it on, it locks everything kind of in place. And if you like I was saying with mine, it's just essentially just two wedges that are driven in here. And if you make them essentially like, I don't know, lack of a better word, if you make them essentially like a drive hook, so then as you drive that wedge in here, it'll actually if you make it like a drive hook, it'll give you a little hook down here that you can also hang things from, if you want to do it that way. I didn't do it that way, but it was something I thought about. Yeah, open source blacksmithing. I mean that's what I love about it. That kind of stuff is you can take it. See, it's the same with the keyed in anvil and the keying system. You know, you can take a striking anvil, and if as long as you have the shapes and swages, you have an you know you could essentially create a one of those ginormous 500-pound swage blocks that doesn't weigh 500 pounds and something that you can remove and add swages to quickly. That's what I love about that system. And something I've been meaning and wanting to do is make different swages for the striking anvil that key in exactly for that reason. I want to really show that in an upcoming conference or demo. I'd like to have a few of those ready for Quad State to be able to show people what you could actually do with this system. It's like, look at what you can actually do with this. And I would love to sit down with Brian again and kind of walk through and talk through some of that. Where the idea for that whole keyed in system, where he got that, what inspired that. And I bring that up because I remember watching years ago a Sheffield cutlery YouTube video, and the bladesmith that was working on the knives they were showing. This is like a video from the '60s or something, but it seemed like a lot of the tools he was using worked in a similar fashion, where they dropped into a table and they locked in somehow, and then he was working at like this workbench with this anvil, like different dies that he could use and stuff, and it was really cool. And I don't know that that's where Brian got it from, but I've always suspected. I was like, man, I bet you Brian saw this and thought, damn, what if I took that idea and scaled it up? I don't know if that's where he got it from. Again, I don't want anybody to think that's what I'm saying. That's not. I don't know. But I saw that and I just correlated that a little bit, and I thought, man. But then I thought to myself, with the interchangeable swage blocks would be very cool. I mean, my biggest problem with a giant swage block is they're so freaking ungainly to use, and I've yet to use a swage block stand that doesn't jump around all over the place and your swage block is chattering all over the place. Oh, I hate that. Hate it. And let's say you're working on like one side of it, but you want the edge. Now you got to get in there and flip it up to get it on the edge, and hope you don't break a finger in the process. You know. Yeah, I've still got that sitting on my tray, Jot. The half round. Yeah, that's still sitting on my tray actually. And I think I don't know for certain. I haven't tested it, but I think the key I use for my Keaton anvil, I think would work on that. I haven't tested it. I should, but I've not tested it. And I've been meaning to make a new key anyways, so that might be an excuse to do that. Like my key, it works fine, but it has a little bit too much taper on one end, and there really should be much less taper. It should be almost think of a hammer eye drift when you think of these keys, right? You want almost a straighter taper, much more gradual taper. If there's too much, it, and you can tell, by the way, an easy way to know that you've got too much taper is when you got to knock the key out. When you go to knock that key out, when it gives, when it finally gives, if the key gets shot out of the stem, there's too much taper on it. It shouldn't come flying out of there like a bullet. But it also shouldn't require you to hit it with everything you've got when you're swinging a 5 pound hammer at it, Corbin. Um, you should only take a few, just boom, boom, boom. I go for 3 hits and then 2 light hits at the end, just taps, dip, dip. So but I'm not wailing on it, but I'm just driving it. But that's always worked for me. But I've always known that particular key has a little too much taper in it. I mean, I could reforge it. I don't want to though. I want to forge a new one, thicker one. I think that one's a little too thin too. I mean, it works fine, but I always felt that if it was a little thicker and filled the slot in the stem, it would be a better key. But yeah, should definitely be more like a Morse taper. But yeah, keyed in suede set would be nice. I intend to have. I've got the one Jot made, and then I've got a 60-degree V swage that Brian made me that I need to do the Hardy stem for. And then I've got a couple of others. I want to make a shovel swage because I think that would be fun with a striker to make a shovel swage. Um, so those are just other things that I'd like to make at some point. They're relatively simple. Relatively simple. The keyed in flat block Mark made is on the bucket list. I'm not sure I know what you're talking about there. Keyed in flat block. Like his flatter anvil? A radius block. Hmm. I don't know if I noticed that. But anything that you're forging on, if you can key it in to keep it from moving, I think it's better. It's ideal, you know. Um, honestly, the same would go for a cupping tool. Like a cupping tool that you can key in, which would allow you to present the hammer or the billet. I'll see if I can show this. You put it in a cupping tool, and it would allow you to present that billet at different angles. So even with a hardy stem, you stand the risk of this being, when it hit, slamming into the side of your hardy hole. So by keying it in, you reduce the amount of movement capable. Um, so you can do that. But yeah, you'll present this billet, with a drift in here. Wouldn't be technically this, but you know, you could present it like this, and this, and you're coming in and getting it. But you use a sacrificial cupping tool for that because this side would be cold typically. Um, but be able to key that in would be pretty handy. Can't use a non or a cupping tool that doesn't hardy stem on it because you're just going to kick it out like a hockey puck. Um, but being able to key that in, I think, would be pretty nice. So a travel keyed in post vise, a game changer. Well, I'll tell you what. Clifton Ralph already did that. He had a post vise that dropped into his hardy hole on his anvil, which is sitting over at Kurt Fehrenbach's shop. So you can take it off that stand and drop it in. I don't remember if it keys in or not, but it drops into the hardy of that anvil. It's a pretty slick little setup. Um, it's a pretty slick little setup. But yeah, be able to do that on a striking anvil would be pretty damn nice. I've got several swedges that I would like to make to start showing off the versatility of a striking anvil in the keyed system, I think. So one of the other things outside of the swedges that I want to make are is on my bucket list to do this year with the mill is a die anvil. I'd like to make a die anvil with my mill and be able to key that in to the striking anvil and use that. I think that'd be really handy. These are all things that I would like to have done in time for Quad State to be able to show that off. Yeah. Um, yeah, that's the TV tray for all it's worth. This was like, I was excited to get this done in Fusion. I've actually 3D printed this before, and it is okay. It was a little thin. I might revisit this. I know more about 3D printing now. To pull this off a little bit better, execute a little bit better. Um, but yeah, it was just the CAD itself. I was quite happy with. So, anyways, let me close that out before and I forget. Uh, and there's that. Let me. I don't. I know I sent pictures back and forth of that TV tray with those other rails. I know I sent those pictures to Paul when I was doing it. This is not it. That's my travel tray. Oh, when was that? That reminds me. So, this is my new anvil stand that I've not started working on yet, but this will be an anvil stand eventually. Need to cut this center post down a little bit, but it will become an anvil stand eventually. I think Chris Cash, aka I think it's Mount Phillips Forge, he's got some. Um, I think it's where I first saw that. He's got some stands where he used an old drill press base. It was a handy little idea, I thought. So I thought enough of it that I kept that in the back of my mind. So when that became available, Steve King allowed me to take that off his hands. So I appreciate that greatly. So this is not the pictures, man. What is going on? What is it going on? What in the what? I would say that was 2024, so probably before Quad State. Um, yeah. pictures I look at, and it's just like, oh, yeah, I forgot all about that. Let's see. Yeah, I don't remember how long ago that was. It would make that a lot easier to find. But as to whatever. Actually, I just realized that I have some questionable pictures in here that I should definitely be mindful of. Question. It's being generous, Rob. No, that's the old one. That's the old TV tray. Hang on. This is funny. Brian, Ed, and myself all started one of these back in like June of 2022, and it took me almost a year to motivate myself enough to actually finish it. And when I did, um, it was a very fulfilling feeling for sure. I was very glad to have gotten that thing done. It took some time. Now that is for damn sure. Let's see, Paul messages. Let me back up to like a year ago. This is kind of funny because I sent poor Paul. I send him some of the dumbest shit sometimes. We have a group chat too, and then sometimes it's I'm sending those poor bastards some of the dumbest stuff all the time. Zach Rapatoni and Dan Borowski and Chase Smothers, they're all probably like, oh God, here we go. What is he sending me now? Because I'll find things and be like, oh, yeah, hardened. Let's see. Reason striking anvils are 511 as they were originally made from forklift time. My anvil harder than anything. My anvil is harder than anything I got. It's hard on hammers. I miss a lot. Well, stop missing. Yeah, problem solved. So, making a Keating anvil with a 4140 top and heat treating it, I would say that's fine, but your you're going to introduce potential issues um, going down the road, right? So when you miss and you ding up your anvil, which you will, fixing a 4140 top that's been hardened is going to be far more difficult versus mild steel, where you can fill the big one, you can peen the dings back down or fill them with just weld and then just grind them back. Much easier to fix. You get a banged up hardy hole, How we typically fix those on a striking anvil is just drive a drift through the hole cold and clean it up, and then maybe take a file to it after that. But for the most part, unless it's really bad, that usually takes care of it. Um, you are not going to get away with that on 4140. It does not like that. Um, what I would recommend, unless you just are struggling finding that material in that size and mild, but I would recommend mild. And then just make, if you want a hardened face to work on, make yourself some anvil blocks and then get those hardened. So let me tell you from experience, setting rivets cold on my Keating anvil did not go well. So I have been meaning to make some hardened um, anvil blocks for mine, just for things like that. Uh, but the overall, like the striking anvil itself, definitely I would definitely stick with mild steel on that. Um, personally, I find um, that that's fine. I mean, usually the only time it really I've noticed any damage is just from people missing or working too cold. That's it. And it's relatively easy to fix. And even on a strike anvil, unless they're just like really bad, even dings you typically don't even have to do anything with. You just work around them. Not a big deal. Yeah, I've thought about doing the Keating anvil um, at like 1045, but honestly, the more I think about it, it's just like it'd be easier just to make an anvil block and harden that, you know. Let me go back to my scrolling with Paul here. Hey, I've been scrolling for 5 minutes. I'm at the beginning of March. That should tell you how much dumb shit I send poor Paul. It's usually stupid auction finds. Like I found an induction forge in an auction that's about the size of a two-car garage. Um, but needless to say, um, aside from moving it, which I don't think I could afford to even get it moved here, and then powering it is going to be the other uh, problem to solve. I had that issue with a power hammer once. I had an opportunity to buy a 2,500 pound steam hammer on the stupid cheap. The problem was when I started looking into it, it was going to cost me about 10 grand to get it torn down and moved here, and then I would have to build a shop around it, pour a foundation for it, and then figure out how to power it. I mean, those are all problems that would have been fun to solve, I suppose. Um, but yeah, I want to be able to run a power hammer my neighbors can feel a mile away. That would be fun. Wake the dead in my graveyard over here. I want to rock them right out of their coffins. If they're dead, what do they care? Eh? Yeah, I can't find pictures. I'll have to spend some time. I'll just take. It's probably be at this point. It would be quicker for me to take pictures of that trade tomorrow, and I'll send them to you, Jot, because I'm scrolling through this shit. I can't find it. Um, Yeah, and as far as the anvil blocks, you can make like a eight-sided block, or you can just stick with a four-sided block too. And each side, you just put a different radius on it. Um, if you if you just do a square, do your near and far side, put the same radiuses on it, and then turn it 90 degrees, and then like leave some sharp edges on there so you have sharp edges to do stuff with. But obviously, an eight-sided one is going to provide you more radiuses to work from. Um, and they're relatively easy to make. Um, on your tire hammer, I would think you could easily make one um, to fit your hardy hole. Get it where you want it, and then if you make it out of like 1045, I mean you do 4142, but if you make it out of 1045, you can just water quench it. I've had to make one for the state fair because their anvil's not a one has decent edges on it. So I made one a couple of years ago and took down there, and we use it all the time when I'm there. Um, and another one would be is a like a essentially like a big fuller hardy tool as well. Can be handy for certain things. But just like a little 1 inch block, um, man, are so handy because there's times when you want to work on something small, you know, just a 1 inch block can allow you to get into a lot of things that you normally wouldn't be able to. Really, really nice. Yeah, and it's sucker rod, John. Certain sizes sucker rod. I don't know what you call that end. I call it the knuckle. I don't know if that's really it was just like the threaded end, and it's got essentially square already. So that you cut a little bit of that off of a piece of sucker rod and then heat that up. You got to do a little grinding back to grind back a little bit of that to forge it all down. Once you get that, you just heat that up and put it in your hardy and just, you know, um, upset it down in your hardy, and and just shape it to the shape you're looking for. Easy way to make an anvil block. Dude, I've got some of that B7, B16 stuff or whatever. I got a that bolt is about this big around. Um, hard as hell. That I do remember. Got it when we were up at Warriors way back in November. Um, one of the guys at Coal Iron Works got 3 or 4 of them. I don't know if he's done anything with them yet. I'll have to ask him. And then Chase gets some shit with a NASA launch code name. B52535454. I don't know. It goes on. He loves to say that, but I guess it's the shaft that they use on turbines. Man, that stuff is crazy hard. Yeah, I don't. I think whatever this bolt is, I don't think it's chromoly. I mean, not that that doesn't rust, but I mean, just the way that this is rusted just makes me think. I mean, it could very well could be, but I just know this stuff is. It was used for a I want to say a rock crushing rig or something in a mine. If I recall, that's what its purpose was. And the bolt itself is about 36 inches long, and again, every bit 4 inches round, if not 5 inches round. It's a beast. And I guess the guy was saying that when they pull those, they can't reuse them. They have to scrap them. And the bolts themselves are like thousands of dollars, I think is what he said. Some crazy. What I should have said is like, hey, dude, any of these have springs? We could use some of those springs. So let me. Where is. Close that shit. So, anyways, I really didn't have any kind of agenda other than to run my mouth about the table I want to work on. Um, we'll get to that. Oh, we did no real forging. No, we did no forging when was Paul here a couple days ago. Paul came out to help me wire up some stuff. I needed to do some wire. I've got an oven um, in an auction, and I wanted to wire it up and move it. So we moved it, wired it up. It works. Um, and then we essentially hardwired the power hammer. Whereas before I had this floppy ass cord, and I had to plug into a welding extension cord. Um, so that is no longer as hill chucky as it once was. So we did that. I think I think outside of all that, I think the only thing left really is to wire the tire hammer more permanently and then run another particular run for the grinder. But we got all that done last time, so it'll make things a lot cleaner. And then sometime this year, I have to run some three-phase wiring, and we're going to swap the motor on the power hammer from the 5 horse that it's running now to a 7.5 horse three-phase motor. And then I've got two three-phase machines, two lathes. Well, four, one, two, three. I've got three lathes that run three phase, but two of them are 480 volt. So I want to get those wired up this year too. It pains me to have such a badass Monarch that is currently not wired up, so I technically can't use it right now. I'd like to get that changed sometime this year so that it can be used. I'd like to put that Monarch to work. I've spun it up a couple of times. It ran and it was super quiet, but I didn't really do anything with it, so I'd really like to get to where I can start using it. Um, there are things. I mean, yeah, I can forge stuff that it's but I can also use the lathe to do some of those things. Not so much that I have to or need to. It's more like it's like my lathe is capable of turning tapers, and I'd really like to play with that and see because it's got a big ass taper attachment on the machine. So I'd like to play with that just to see what I can do with it. You know, um, that would be pretty sweet. That lathe is a beast. It's a beast. that's the kind of lathe that is like you don't see in a shop every day these days. So it's pretty nice. And I was offered a Monarch many years ago to just have. All I had to do was figure out how to move it and store it, and I just couldn't figure it. I didn't think to figure it out, and I had been kicking myself in the ass ever since that day. And it was I mean, that lathe was huge, um, and I've been kicking myself in the ass for not taking it. Now knowing what a Monarch lathe really is, so the moment I was able to buy one at auction, I jumped at the chance. So now that I've got it, I'd love to get that thing up and running full time and really put it through its paces. I'm looking forward to that. But that side of the shop is pretty much it's just two machines that need to be wired for the 480. Everything else is wired three phase though already and running. I have another lathe back there. It's not as big as the Monarch, but it's an older Sydney. And it's a nice lathe. I turned down the bolts that are anchoring my power hammer right now. I turned those bolts down on that lathe because to buy those bolts was going to cost me $1,200. So I learned how to thread those bolts myself using sucker rod, um, and saved myself $1,200 in the process. And all that was oof, about a year ago, and that was Mark Krause had helped me with that via chat, text, or whatever. He helped me with a lot of that stuff back then, so owe him huge, huge thanks for that because he put up with a ridiculous amount of dumbass questions from me. Because I'm not a machinist. I don't. There's a lot of that kind of stuff I just don't know. So I just constantly ask, or and then there's other cases where I don't know. I don't even know what to ask. There's a couple things he suggested I do. I had to do them just to understand what it was he was wanting me to do. But once I did them, I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. I get it. I actually had to do those things. This is like captured nut thing. I was like, oh, what the hell are you talking about? He sent me some crazy drawings that I couldn't make heads or tails of. So I just had to do it before it made sense. You could have got a 24-inch Monarch from the valve shop for free. Well, dude, if it comes up again, you need to let me know. Well, I'll make room for it. Do I have a rotate head mill? I'm not sure I understand. I mean, I've got a 15-inch rotary table for my mill. The head on the mill can be tilted for sure, if that's what you mean. Yeah, I mean, I can tilt the head on my mill. It's a Bridgeport. But I've got a 15-inch rotary table for mine that weighs like 200 pounds. I don't like moving it because it weighs like 200 pounds. But yeah, a 24-inch Monarch. I forget what the swing is on mine, 20 something. But it's only 48 between centers. So it's not super long. That's what I liked about it. Where my Sydney lathe is, I forget what it is on center, but it's almost 10 feet long. And then I gave a lathe to Paul because he had helped me so much, and I had the other two anyways. I was like, man, if we can get this thing running, I'll give you this one. So I gave him one, and that one has got a 25-inch swing on it. So if you remove there's a thing on the ways. If you remove it, that lathe has got a 25-inch swing. It's like a 17 on normal, and then 25 once you remove that part. So essentially you're pulling a part of the ways out. Once you remove that, increases the swing to 25. I think the Monarch has something similar, but I think it's 21-inch swing right now. I forget, but like I said, only like 48 inches on center. So it's not super long, but which is great. And then I've got another smaller lathe, much smaller lathe, much faster lathe. I forget what it spins up to, but it's redonkulous. But it's meant to turn down smaller parts, smaller diameter parts. That's the problem with the bigger lathe, right? It's like I think 600 to 800 RPM on it max. That smaller lathe is in the thousands somewhere. So a big lathe will cut big stuff, no problem. But if you're trying to cut a really small tool, or a part, like out of like quarter-inch round, it's just not really, it's just not moving fast enough, really. Yeah, you can mill a swage block, but come on now. I can't be doing that. But I intend to use the mill um, I intend to use the mill for the die anvil for sure. When I use the mill on my striking anvils, I use it on the keyed-in anvil too. Use it to face the tops. I just put a fly cutter on it and then zip the tops down nice and clean. So again, that's back to, as far as repairs go. Like if I had to, I just fill the nasty stuff with weld, grind it back a little bit, and I can just throw it up on the mill. One pass with a fly cutter usually is all I'm going to need. Um, and then Paul's got a surface grinder too. So if I really wanted to get fancy, I could go over to his place and take it to the surface grinder and really make it pretty. We did that with Kurt's 250 Little Giant, the bottom die for his 250. We surfaced it. I think we cleaned it up with a fly cutter, and then I think he took it to his place and then cleaned it up with with his surface grinder. We still need to do the top die, but I don't know what's become of that. But we got to scribe the top die off of the bottom die so that they sit parallel to one another, because they currently do not. But once we get that done. I mean, yeah, you can definitely use the mill for some of that stuff. I can even use the lathe for some of that stuff. Um, depending on what we're doing, though, to be honest, in a lot of those cases, though, the press is going to be faster because the amount of setup time. on a mill in the lathe versus just throw it in a gas forge and get it hot. As long as we got the appropriate top tool for it, the press would be quicker to make swages with. So that's the key though, is to make those tools. But yeah. But using the mill for something like the dial a hole all day long, especially with that rotary table. I can set the first point and then just turn that crank and it rotates it for you. You can set your set points. I could even use my um, the DRO to help with that. And actually in Fusion, I've already got a dial a hole. I printed it to tested it to tested it out to make sure that the hole placement was correct. Which, if I recall, I think it was. I think it's still in the shop. I should double check it. But yeah, John, we didn't do the anything dies. We yeah yeah. But yeah, one day he'll come around. He'll come around. So, anyways, I'm gonna call it there. I gotta work in the morning, so I can pay for all the dumb shit I bought in the auction. Um, so I will catch you guys later, and I will be streaming on Wednesday.